What is up, everyone? Welcome back to our lawn, and as you can tell from the hoodie, weather's finally starting to break and it's fall. And as such, it is as good of a time as ever to give you what I am going to consider the complete guide to fall lawn care. And now for those of you that follow along to the channel who have subscribed to me for a while, watch my content, you will know that I'm not somebody that's going to make the algorithm busting clickbait kind of title telling you this one trick to have a great lawn this fall, do this one thing. No. I do my best to speak from my experience and the things that I've learned and the people I've talked to who are smarter than me and relay that information onto you as best as I can to help you make the best decision for you, your time, your budget, and the current situation that you're dealing with in your property, because that's actually helpful to you. So what we're going to talk about today is what I believe to be three approaches, three situations that you might encounter. One specific to me and some of my subscriber base with the putting green in the backyard. But those three scenarios likely to be: you have maintained a yard, it's performing well, you've taken care of it all year long, and it's in a good spot. A neglected, toasted weed field yard that's either there because you didn't have the time this year, life got in the way, or because you're in a new home, new to you, what you do in this type of situation. And then the last would be if you are somebody that is fortunate enough to have set up a putting green in your backyard, how I've approached and had success in fall to set me up for the next year, and what I would recommend for you to do in something like this. Plug update from a couple of videos ago. They're starting to move. That's the middle of one, that's the middle of other. They're almost coming together. So let's start over here in the neglected yard. So this is the side of my property. I've used it as a testing ground in years past, but since my knee surgery, I haven't done anything with it, and you can tell. All sorts of weeds, cooked turf, more weeds, more weeds. So let's take a seat and have a quick chat here about what you're going to do if your yard looks like this. The first thing you're going to do, this is really bright, hold on. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to get back to mowing and watering. Because again, temperatures have settled, the grass is going to start to wake up, start to come out of dormancy again, and we want to be on top of that when it does happen. So mowing, a recommendation I would make, I would say let's bring it down one notch from whatever notch you're intending to mow at for the rest of the year. Essentially what that's going to do is it's going to get all the brown a little bit underneath the canopy that we will hopefully grow up into and that height, and it will mask some of the dead spots and the brown turf that you have in your lawn. And then generally speaking, we're going to mow as often as you can. Twice a week is going to be ideal, again, because we're going to, as we'll discuss, start to push some growth, be watering, and we're going to need to stay on top of that as to not damage our recovering lawn. And then we're going to water, not deep and infrequent. We're going to water as often as you can, a quarter to a half an inch of water each time. This can even be daily if needed, until the color comes back. Now that can be with a big rainfall. Maybe you see the color start to come back. Now we can manage our watering along with the video that I've made on how to water more efficiently and more effectively. You can get back to that. However, when we're coming from this brown wasteland, we got to water a little bit more frequently to get it to come out of dormancy. Since I want to make this as complete of a guide as possible, fall is when everyone's going to tell you to aerate. They're going to aerate every fall, and that's why their yard looks great. That's not true. It's probably true that they aerate every fall, but it's not the reason their yard looks good. So as we walk and talk a little bit, let's talk about how I would recommend you making the decision on whether or not you should aerate. So you're going to walk around, you're going to observe your yard all of the time, and you're going to see, do you have areas that are a problem? Do you have areas when it rains, when you water, that don't react or recover quite as well? Because maybe there is some water penetration issues. Now, even then, wetting agents might be a better option than aeration. However, those are the types of places that I would go for aeration. Are you managing a sports field, a putting green, something that's walked on all the time, gets a ton of traffic? Do you have what I'm standing in right now, which is the current sports field that gets used all year long by my nephews and my kids? Fair bit of traffic, but even then, I don't have compaction issues. I'm not going to aerate. If we come back up here to this area that's just been baking in the sun, this might be a little bit more beneficial because you're probably going to have a little bit of a hard pan on top. And an aeration can definitely help you break that surface up a little bit and just help with all the other things that we're going to be doing. So now let's get back to the neglected yard. We're going to do two things now. Like I mentioned, in these neglected yards, you're going to have weeds. We want to spray those out. I'm not going to talk in this video much. I recommend you getting some sort of pump or backpack or battery operated sprayer and using somebody's weed control concentrate. I've had a ton of luck with the Spectracide product. It's the one I recommend. However, Ortho, BioAdvance, they're all good. Go grab whatever you can grab. They're cheap. Pick it up, apply it, get your weeds. And if you want more detail on how to do it, you can check out this video that I did on an in-depth review of how to apply these weed control products. And then because we have a neglected lawn that we haven't been doing anything with or doing anything to, it's hungry. So we are going to fertilize. And we're not just going to fertilize, we're going to fertilize heavy. Whether you want to do it in a ½ pound of N every 2 weeks or 1 pound all at once. I'd maybe recommend the ½ pound every 2 weeks. I'd say we want to get at least a pound of N out on our neglected lawns in the months of September, October, and depending on your climate, if it's still growing, even into November. Maybe walk it back a little bit on November since it's just not going to be growing as aggressively anymore. And the last thing I want to touch on is the highly lauded, often talked about fall overseed or fall renovation. And now as I stand here, this part of my yard's terrible. It's pretty thin, but let's take a look at something. If we come down in here, yes, it is thin, but I don't have any wide area bare spots. I have this little area here. I have this little area here, but there's grass all throughout this. There's no need to go through the time, expense, effort to go through all of this, aerate it, or excuse me, to go through all of this, overseed it, top dress it, have to go through the process of watering in a way to get seed to germinate. Even if I do all that, it's not a guarantee that any of this comes in, but in a situation like this, there's plenty of grass in here that once we start taking care of it again, and again, I'm not going to because I don't care about this part of my yard, but once you start taking care of it again, it will all fill right back in. You won't have any issues. And that's it. Mowing, watering until it comes back. Then getting the watering dialed in, fertilizing heavy, spraying out the weeds. You're gonna be really happy. And while you may not get to a point this fall that you wanna get to, next spring you keep doing this sort of thing, you keep following along to good general maintenance practices in your yard, you will be amazed what this dumpster fire would look like come next May, early June. And the last thing, somewhat controversial for fall lawn care, big old maples that my neighbor has here, they will completely cover this area in about a ½ inch to an inch of leaves, probably in total 3 times throughout the fall. If I continue to mow it, I'll have a complete coating of leaves, and you can start to see they're starting to fall a little bit. I got some on the ground. Do I mulch? Do I bag? What do I do with leaves? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you do with them. All you need to do is make sure you don't have a layer that is completely covering, and that's going to go for any section of your yard at any point throughout the fall. You can mulch if they're light enough where you can mulch them in and you get them out of the way. Perfect. Then you don't have to bag them, find anywhere to go with it. If they're really heavy, mulching's probably going to be tricky. You're probably not going to be able to break it down enough to get them completely out of the canopy. So then I probably recommend bagging. Then as promised, we move into the part of the yard, the part of you who are here on a fall lawn care video that have something that has generally done really well throughout the year. Yeah, maybe you have a little bit of discoloration, lost a little bit to drought, whatever, but you've generally maintained the whole property. Maybe you got a weed or two, but it's not a widespread problem. And for those of you who are on this video, for one, I have to ask why. Clearly you know what you're doing. Maybe you're just like me, at which point, thank you, I appreciate that. But you have to do very little. It's a good chance you've been watering throughout. It's a good chance you've been taking care of the property. You probably don't have any compaction issues, any things you need to do. You certainly don't need to overseed. You very likely don't need to aerate. You've already been fertilizing, you've been watering, you've been doing all the things that you're supposed to. Just keep doing that. That's all. It's an easy game. If you have some weeds like I do, go do a quick weed treatment if you have one left on your max rates for 2,4-D or whatever your herbicide du jour happens to be. But for you, for the type of person that has a yard that you're generally happy with, that you've been maintaining, my message to you will be the same as it always is to everybody. Just relax, do less, stop spending all your money on stuff that you don't need to do. And then to close out the video, we come back to the happiest place on earth, which is the backyard putting green. If you have one of these, you know that feeling. And so, what do I do in the fall? Generally, I'm going to up fertilizer pretty heavily because there is probably something that has happened to you like it happens to me every year, unless you're just the goat at this and you're unbelievable at general maintenance, is that over the course of the year, you have lost portions of your backyard green. Or in this case, as I walk around the fairway. Right? Disease ravaged you at some point. You lost a bunch of it. The biggest thing I'm going to do back here is I'm going to fertilize pretty darn heavy through the end of the year because I want to get this bent grass to start chasing laterally as quickly and as aggressively as I can. And again, it's a time of year when it's a little bit safer to do that. Disease pressure is going to be down because the temperatures aren't as high. And the grass isn't struggling and fighting with the heat and with the drought as much. But all we're going to do, we're going to keep the water to it. We're going to keep mowing it as regular. We're going to keep the fungicides to it so long as we're seeing disease pressure. And the biggest thing is just to fertilize heavily. Now with sand top dressing, as you get some organic matter buildup, I would recommend, if you can, to aerate. Now I have not done that. I think I only did once actually, and that was only the fairway, it wasn't the green. But that would be the one thing I would kind of recommend, is you want to continue to break up the organic matter on the surface, and again then backfilling in with sand those holes so that we get the drainage that we need, and making sure as much success as possible. Again, I don't have that here. I'm probably not going to aerate because I don't have the tools or the desire to do so. And so far I haven't really had overly aggressive compaction issues that gives me any reason to be worried about the condition of the yard at the moment. And then also I got to keep the leaves off because again, I have all these ash trees that'll drop leaves from now until the end of the year. And they generally do it quite slowly, which is really annoying, but it is what it is. And then lastly, to close the year out, if you can, if you have the sand available to you, I would recommend doing a pretty heavy top dress right before you think winter is gonna get to you. Help put it to bed and help give you a good even surface to work with in the spring, likely help it warm up a little bit more, but that would pair nicely, especially with that aeration as well, if that's something you're gonna do. And that's it, truly, that is everything I recommend for anyone to do here in the fall. Again, if you have your neglected, terrible looking lawn, get after it. Be a little bit more aggressive, fertilize a little bit heavier, aerate if you think you need to. If you have big bare patches, get in there and seed and water and establish that. Again, I have videos on how to do all of those things, growing grass from seed, etc. If you're somebody that's been taking care of your yard for a couple years now and it's just cooking along, doing really well like you always expect it to, relax. Maybe save yourself the $150 on the aerator rental this year. Save yourself on the backbreaking work of dethatching. You probably don't need to do it. Just relax, keep going with your fertilizer, watering, mowing, and enjoy your lawn. And then lastly, on the green, let's make sure we push that growth to recover any issues that we had throughout the year. Aerate if you have the opportunity to do so and the equipment available to you, time and desire. And then let's get that final top dress in to get everything smoothed over, ready to go into winter. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know anything you're kind of planning with. If you disagree with something, let me know that as well. I'll be happy to talk about it with you. Do all that in the comments below. If this was helpful to you, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to follow along to everything that we're doing here in our lawn. Again, I got the 1-month follow-up on the robot that'll be coming soon, and the general maintenance of a backyard putting green.